So the Packers have finally made a move in free agency. It is not the position I expected right off the bat, but the Packers decide to bolster their offensive line. It came out here from Ian Rappaport, who says the top guard is off the market. Sources say 49ers guard Aaron Banks is expected to sign with the Packers as QB Jordan Love gets another bodyguard. It's a 4-year, $77 million deal, so that puts it at $19.25 million per year. The top paid guard in the NFL is currently Trey Smith at $23 million per year. There are currently 5 other guards making more than Aaron Banks will be making. But this is a big move here, deciding to bring in a guard, which I honestly didn't see the big move the Packers make being spending up on a guard, considering they already have Elgton Jenkins, who is one of the better guards in the league, a left guard. You already have Sean Ryan, who I think played pretty good at right guard. You had Jordan Morgan competing with Sean Ryan. So I sort of felt like the Packers had their guard situation figured out. But I think here with Banks spending a majority of his time at left guard, pretty much all of it. I was taking a look here at his stats from his time with the Niners, where he was a second-round pick back in 2021. He's only played 5 snaps not at left guard. He played 5 snaps at right guard his rookie year. But outside of that, he has played 2,581 snaps at left guard. And during that time, he's only allowed 2 sacks. So he is clearly a very talented guard in the NFL. But with him spending all this time at left guard, it does make it seem that maybe the plan here is to move Elgton Jenkins to center, which he can play a lot of the different positions along the offensive line. And you would assume that, the Packers signing a guy to this kind of contract wouldn't, try him out at a new position like a right guard. So I would assume they're going to play him at left guard if that's where he's played during his time with the Niners, maybe during training camp or during the offseason they think maybe he could play elsewhere. I don't know. Maybe right guard. But right now, I would assume he's going to play left guard if the Packers are paying him this kind of money. So with Josh Myers, as I shared earlier today from Bill Huber, Josh Myers not expected to be re-signed by the Packers. They had a hole there at center. And so I mentioned how, some of the options were on the team. Elgton Jenkins has some history playing center. Sean Ryan has played a little center. Zach Tom can play center. And so this is an interesting decision. I'm still thinking through it because there's so many different ways the Packers could move this offensive line around. If you move Elgton Jenkins to center, you would have Banks at left guard, Sean Ryan or Jordan Morgan at right guard, maybe Rasheed Walker left tackle, Zach Tom right tackle. I remember years ago, maybe it was last offseason, Rob Domofsky had shared that the Packers really saw Zach Tom as like basically they thought if he played center, I'm pretty sure they called him like a Hall of Fame caliber center. So could it be they move Zach Tom to center and try Elgton Jenkins at one of the tackle spots? I don't know. I mean, there are a lot of different things that can be done here, and so I assume they have a plan for how this all wants to go down. But I'm pretty surprised to see this be the move the Packers make today, because while I do think the Packers need some more depth at offensive line, they were pretty good in 2024. With Josh Myers gone, they had to fill that hole, but I thought that they could easily do that. I honestly expected to see maybe an edge rusher signed, maybe a other defensive player signed on this first day of teams signing free agents. But they decided to spend the big bucks on a guard, and I think at the end of the day, you can never go wrong protecting your quarterback, protecting Jordan Love. And so they're really solidifying this offensive line. And I think that's something that, the best teams in the NFL consistently do, just because you don't want to ever get into a spot where you have such a lack of depth on the offensive line that it just really hurts your team. And then when you throw in the fact that when that takes place, you put your quarterback at risk of injury. So you need to protect your most expensive asset in Jordan Love. So I'm fine with this move, even though it's not necessarily the one I was hoping for. I would be more excited right now if I was talking about, an edge rusher signed, because I think that's more of a need than offensive line, even though I do think they need to bolster the depth. But Banks is a really solid guard. Clearly the Packers think so with the money they gave him. As I said, 2 sacks allowed in the past 3 seasons, and he has, played a lot of snaps. As I said, 2,581. If you look at his pressures allowed in the past 3 seasons, 25 in 2024, 23 in 2023, 25 in 2022. So a pretty solid, pass blocker. If you look at his run blocking grade per PFF, it was 68.9 this year. It was in the 50s the years before that. And so he was fine there at least last year in 2024. But I'm curious to see what else the Packers do here in free agency. Is this maybe the only move they make? It could be, it could not be. There's no doubt that the Packers offensive line is going to be, it's going to be a massive strength. He was already a massive strength last year. And I think that if Elton Jenkins moved to center, or if Zach Tom were to move to center, or even Sean Ryan, but mainly Jenkins or Tom, you're upgrading in a massive way over Josh Myers, in my opinion. Because among centers with 1,000 snaps last season, and there were 21 of them, he had the third most pressures allowed. So he was not very great when it came to pass blocking at center. I think there's a reason the Packers decided to move on from him. And so you're going to have a really, really strong unit, I think, in 2025. And I'm curious to see what happens at the tackle positions, because I think that now with them signing a guard, I almost feel like Jordan Morgan is likely going to be moved to tackle. And I think that if you draft him as a tackle, or where he played tackle, mostly in college, you'd like to see your first-round pick, out there playing important snaps at tackle instead of guard. In my mind, that's like the best-case scenario if he can play it. And so I'm curious if this means that Sean Ryan is right guard, maybe Jenkins is center, and then maybe Morgan competes with Rasheed Walker at left tackle. Because Rasheed Walker was fine, but I think that you could definitely improve at left tackle. So regardless, this offensive line is going to be much better. They're not going to have a depth issue now. And if they do draft some offensive linemen in the draft, it's more to add depth, because they have a lot of very solid guys on this offensive line. So Jordan Love has to be pretty happy seeing this, knowing that he's, going to get hit less often, not going to have to deal, with problems there in the interior. It should be pretty strong. And so now my question is, what else are the Packers going to do? Is this the only move they're going to make? I think last year, to start off, I think when you have, Xavier McKinney signed and Josh Jacobs, they're a little more exciting type signings. I think at the end of the day, offensive line is like the smart moves to make, even in the draft. When your team drafts an offensive lineman, you're like, okay, I understand it. It has to happen. But some of those other positions are much more exciting, and I feel like that was the case last year. And I was honestly sitting here earlier today wondering if the Packers were going to do anything. I was sort of just sitting back after, a few hours ready to make a video, and for hours, nothing happening for the Packers, wondering if they're just going to sit back on their hands and do absolutely nothing. Luckily, they're doing something, so we at least have something to be excited about. So that's pretty much it for this. If you want more Packers content, more updates on other potential signings, feel free to subscribe. There are still a lot of other talented players out there on the free agent market, and so it's not like there aren't guys who could still come in and be impactful at edge rusher. From what I've seen, I think Chase Young is still out there, unless, as I was filming this video, he got picked up. But a lot of the really good guys got picked up. Sweat got picked up. A few other guys as well. But that's pretty much all I have for this one. Thank you guys for watching, as always, and I'll see you guys next time.